Hello and welcome to Mumblecast, the oddly structured, poorly researched podcast extravaganza. My name is Liam, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Kayla.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. How was your week today?
It was good. It's been good so far.
How was your week today?
My week to date.
Today. That's what I should have said.
Has been good so far.
Have you done anything fun, or more coaching and training and personal training and teaching?
That's pretty much it. I did get kicked in the shin yesterday.
By Robin.
No.
Your 60-something-year-old
No.
client.
By one of my students.
Did it hurt?
Yeah.
How big was he or she?
He is a 6th grader. So,
What age is that?
I think he's 12.
Okay, they can't be that hard. How many of your 6 could you beat him up?
No.
You think he'd beat you up?
12's him, maybe. I was good with him. Had it been some of the other ones, no.
Why are they big?
Mm-hmm. One of them is.
Because a 12-year-old's big? I guess so. They're getting big.
Yeah.
For
they're
you,
tall.
especially. Yeah.
Like, they're at least as tall as me.
Yeah.
All of them. Minus
And
one.
they probably could almost hit as hard. I think you could probably hit harder right now. But give them like 2 years in.
Yeah.
Because 12 is just before, just at the age where the girls are still bigger than the boys.
Uh-huh.
And then the boys start to grow because they hit puberty a bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're shin okay?
Yeah, it has a bruise, but that's it.
Okay, that's right.
What about you? How was your week?
My week has been good. I didn't really do anything. I've not got enough sleep, but I never do. And just the usual kind of, that's it. The weekend I drove to San Antonio for that rugby game, following our podcast on rugby. It was good, we won. The weather was kind of cold and miserable, but other than that, it was quite good.
Good.
Scotland lost in the Six Nations, again, following on from last week's podcast, which is unfortunate. We won our first game, we lost the second game to Wales. Nope. To Ireland. It's fine.
Who got the wooden spoon this
Wales.
year?
It's not finished yet. So we've got another 3 weeks of games, which is actually over the next 5 weeks, I think, because we have breaks. We have a break this week and then a game, then a break and a game.
Well, we have to report back and see who got the wooden spoon.
We will. I think England will probably win it, and then Italy will get the wooden spoon.
Again?
They lost again. Well, they lost again on Saturday.
Poor Italy.
And I don't think they'll beat the next 3 teams. But we shall see.
Yeah.
So last week, I surprised Kayla with rugby and tried to teach her a little something, which I'm sure if I questioned her now, we might have a little problems, but I'm not going to. I won't put her on the spot.
Thank you.
So this week, Kayla is going to surprise me with a topic. So what is the topic? I have not any idea what this is, so I may be useless and not speak much for the rest of the podcast, just so you know.
Oh, you can ask questions.
What's the topic?
So, you talked about something that you were really into in college.
Oh shit, it's Harry Potter, isn't it?
No, okay, so I really wanted to do Quidditch, but then I was like, that's 2 sports back to back. So we're pausing on Quidditch.
No. It's one sport and one made up, flying about on broomsticks.
Okay. Either way, I waited on Quidditch. It'll come later.
No one.
Yes, it will. We're going to talk about American Sign Language today.
Okay. Of course, because you were saying you did this during college. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, all right. It's going to be an interesting podcast.
Yeah.
To talk about a sign language.
It is.
But we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
In that case,
let's get ready to mumble.
So,
all right. What do you know about sign language?
I know that British has a different sign language to America.
Yes.
I know that it can be abbreviated to ASL.
Yes.
And I know that and that's about it, actually. I don't really know much else.
Well, you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with the history of it.
History of it, okay.
Yes. So, prior to the 19th century, there was no specific sign language in America. There was in Europe. They had a pretty good deaf education, but in America there wasn't really anything. So
this is pre-1900?
This is, yes.
Okay.
So, within different communities, people made up their own signs. Different families, different small communities, people would make up their own signs, but nothing was universal across the U.S.
Sure.
So in 1814, this guy named Thomas Gallaudet, he lived in Hartford, Connecticut, and his neighbor, whose name was Mason Finch Cogswell, he had a daughter who was deaf.
Okay.
So she was 9 years old. Her name was Alice. And Thomas Gallaudet realized that even though Alice was deaf, she was very smart, but she had no way to communicate. And so it was very hard for her to learn any kind of reading, writing, spelling, anything like that, because she had no communication, ways to communicate. So he decided he wanted a teacher to give her some form of communication. So he started with reading and spelling, but then that was really hard because of the phonetics and everything related to that. So within the community, he got a lot of support, and they raised money, and he went to Europe, where he studied under 3 different people. So he went to the National Institute of Deaf Mutes and studied under Abbe Sicard. He was the head of it. And then 2 of his students who had turned educators, Jean Massieu and Laurent Clark. Laurent Clark was like the main guy he studied under. And after a while of studying under him and Clark came back to the U.S. and they started a school together.
Okay, so let's pause. Just recite that. You mentioned the guy at the beginning, and then his next door neighbor and his daughter. Which one's gone to Europe?
The guy at the beginning. So Thomas Gallaudet.
Okay, so why is he helping the neighbor?
He just really liked his neighbors.
I bet he's creeping on the daughter.
Why you gotta turn it bad?
Because why is he going all the way to Europe to help his... was an educator already? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, so he's gone to Europe to the European, one of the big institutes for deaf and mute people, and then he started to learn underneath the second in charge, essentially, of that school.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Continue.
So then the 2 of them come back to the U.S. They start their own school.
So this is Laurent and
Laurent Clark
Gallaudet.
and Gallaudet, yeah.
Okay.
So they created the American School for the Deaf in Hartford, Connecticut in 1817. And this was the first free public school for people who were deaf and hard of hearing. So that school, it took off and it grew, and from there, that kind of just created the whole deaf community. So in that school, you had Laurent Clark, who was French. So he brought over French Sign Language, and then from that, all these kids started coming from different backgrounds all across America, and they brought with them these signs that they had used within their communities.
Is it Laurent? Is it like
Yes.
Yves Saint Laurent? Is it like that?
Probably.
Because is that not spelled the same way as Laurent?
Laurent.
I think that's Laurent. But anyway, carry on. That's French. Yeah, carry on.
I can't speak
No, you're right. I
French.
wasn't sure. I was like, Laurent, that's an odd name. I was thinking, is YSL not Yves Saint Laurent? Is that not spelled the same way? But anyway, it might not be. I might be wrong. But anyway, continue.
It probably is.
When you said it was French. Anyway.
Okay, so ASL became a mixture of French Sign Language and then all of these other side sign languages that these people had created within their communities. And so that kind of funneled into what became ASL. Gallaudet taught until 1830 and Clark taught until the 1850s. So during that time, a bunch of different schools were starting up, and by 1863 there were 22 deaf schools in the U.S.
Oh, so when you said 19th century, you meant 1800. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, cool, got you now. And there was 1963 was how many?
1863 there was 22.
22 and 1860. Okay.
Yeah, and most of these were founded and started by the students of the first one.
Okay.
So they went out.
It's almost like Chinese whispers, though. Surely, it all gets a little bit wrong in the path.
Yeah, so that's kind of made this deaf community within the U.S. So that's kind of what it's founded on. Mm-hmm. So in 1851, Gallaudet died, and his youngest son, his name was Edward Gallaudet, wanted to continue his legacy.
But they can hear, right? All these guys, the 2 people that led this school can hear.
I don't think Laurent Clark could because he was a student at the one in Europe.
Laurent.
That guy. But Gallaudet could.
Say it. Laurent. There we go.
Gallaudet could. I'm not sure about his son, though.
Oh, yeah, why wouldn't he? I mean, unless he made him death,
Yeah. So in 1857, Edward was asked to be the superintendent of Columbia Institute for the Deaf and Dumb and the Blind in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So he was going on to be but he wanted to create a college for the deaf community. So
this was originally a school, and this is just a high school,
it was
up to 18 years old. This is whoever.
I think it was geared towards a college, kind of like an after school education, but they couldn't present
college
degrees.
Level? Yeah.
Okay. So he appealed to Congress his idea about this deaf college, and in 1864 they passed legislation to permit that school to give college degrees. So then that became the first college, deaf and hard of hearing college.
Okay.
So in 1864,
America or in the world?
In the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah, because Europe was way ahead in terms of deaf education.
Okay.
In 1864, Columbia Institute's college division for the National Deaf Mute College, it opened. In 1893, that was renamed to Gallaudet College. And in 1986, that was renamed to Gallaudet University, which made it the first deaf university in the world.
Okay.
And the only one.
Uh-huh. So it's a full deaf university.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's the Gallaudet University in Connecticut, you said?
No, that's in D.C.
D.C.,
yes.
Right.
So that's kind of the history of sign language.
American Sign Language.
Yes, American Sign Language.
Okay. So I have lots of questions, but you might answer them, so continue on and we'll see.
Well, ask
Okay,
them
so
you
like,
can...
that works with Roman letters. Like, so all the Latin languages it works with. And you've got the American Sign Language and you've got the British / I'm assuming, what does France use? Do they have their own sign
French
language?
Sign Language.
Okay, so does each language have its own sign language?
Kind of. So French does, British does, Australian does. Even
Australia's
though
different to the British and to the French.
yeah, even though they're all
American.
English based, like if it's very hard to communicate between the three.
So
They're
it's
not
silly. I know it's because they've been developed separately, but still.
parts of West Africa, parts of Canada, and parts of Southeast Asia use American Sign Language or a dialect of American Sign Language. So we'll get into the dialects a little bit later, like the Creole languages or whatever, but those are all based off of American Sign Language.
How about things like Chinese and like Arabic? Because they don't have the same... Because they still spell like shaping out the letters of the Latin languages, right? To some degree.
Well, we're going to get into like the hand signals later, but yeah, so each hand shape will be... Well, so you have...
I guess it doesn't really, because maybe it's just the British one that they do actually kind of create the shape a little bit. But
the hand shapes create...
Well, you know how you can basically spell the language and then the hand shapes do simulate the letters, at least in the British. But how we do that in China when each symbol is created through a noise rather than actual a word type thing.
So it would be based more off of whole words and less off of letters,
okay, so
I think.
Chinese sign language would be basically completely different to the actual way Chinese is spoken or like written normally.
I think so.
Interesting. Carry on.
I have no idea. Chinese sign language would be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Okay. Go
Continue.
ahead.
I was going to ask another thing. Is Braille's about, right?
Braille what?
Braille's about at this point.
I have no idea.
Well, surely that's a big part of like a deaf school.
No, deaf would just be... Well, we're going to get into
Oh, no, because that's
deaf
blind. What am I talking
yeah.
about? Yeah, I'm being an idiot.
Yeah,
okay.
we're going to get into deaf blind in a minute, but
We're going to speak about Helen Keller.
no.
Oh, what?
I think she was way before, was she
the
not?
queen of deaf and blind.
She was.
Okay, sorry, I was
think she was
getting
way
confused. Yeah, I wasn't getting confused. I was just being an idiot.
Yeah.
Carry on.
No.
Yes,
I
thanks.
didn't agree with you. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Okay, so there's different variations of ASL based on different regions. So one of these can be based on sign production. Like in the South, signs are usually like a lot slower, a lot more like they flow and a lot more like fluid and with ease. And in the North, like they're very like sharp and pointed and just very fast. In the West, it's very fast. So like how people talk depending on the regions is kind of how they sign. So that's kind of interesting. It also varies among age, native versus non-native. The most notable sign between a hearing versus a non-hearing person.
What do you mean native and non-native?
Somebody who was born deaf or like grew up in the deaf community, and somebody like me who like learned it later on.
Okay.
So one of the most notable differences with that is rhythm and arm posture. So like knowing where to put your arms in space, and then how fluidly you sign, obviously, because that comes with time.
I guess that's like speaking another language. It's where to put accents, you know, or how fluid the sentence is, and where you pausing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and pausing is huge too, because in sign language, like the wording or the syntax of a sentence isn't the same as it would be in spoken English. So I'm gonna get it like that is the most complicated
Why
part.
did they do it that way though? Like surely if you can speak, the people who are creating it could speak and hear English. Why did they create it with the syntax that wouldn't have that?
So that goes into an oral versus manual debate. The deaf community likes to be its own community, and so a lot of times deaf kids were forced to learn orally but the deaf community wanted it to be more manual. And so there's this debate always back and forth over like which way should be taught. And I think there's a way to merge them both. I think that sign language has its place. And I think also if you're going to learn how to read, the oral part is also very important to that. But
you want the community to have their own say in how they speak.
Yeah. So that's a big part of like why the syntax is a little different.
Well, you say that, but like there's Queen's English and then there's everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you go through America and we all speak English, but half the time you don't understand what people are saying. You know, within the same city, you can do that. You know, and half the time people look at me going, "What's he saying?" And I think I speak clear English. I am speaking English, but so you should teach what it is correct, and then they will adjust accordingly. They shouldn't be like, "Oh, we should teach it." I don't know. I'm not deaf. It's hard for me to say, but you think you would teach the proper way, and then they would adjust accordingly.
So a lot of that goes back to the whole like because every group was bringing in their own signs. Mm-hmm. Sign language became a subject or a topical subject first. So like when you start a sentence, the thing that is the topic of the sentence is typically what's spoken about first. Maybe that's just ease of
example. Give me an example of how we would speak about it and how they would say it, but just obviously use English.
I'm going to do this later, but I can do it
now. We can do it later.
No, I can just go to it now. It's okay.
No, do it later because you've obviously set it up in an order.
Okay. So other dialects, so variations. So we still have the regional, which is like sign production, south, north, like wherever in the state. There's also...
Sorry, I'm going to get such questions because using jargon I don't quite know. Sign production, what do you mean?
Like how fast it's signed.
Oh, is that what you're talking about? But different. Okay,
like fast versus like slow and like with ease or whatever. There's also differentiations between African Americans and white people and how they sign, because a lot of that came out of segregation. It's called Black American Sign Language. Usually uses a larger signing space. It prefers two-handed variations of signs versus one-handed. And then within this sign language, it uses a lot of syntactic repetition. So repeating the same phrases again in order for, like, it's like pragmatic. It's not clarifying, because we'll talk about subjects being repeated later, because a lot of times the deaf community will like say a subject and then say it again at the end for clarification, but this is just like a pragmatic thing. And then there's also like a eubonic shift. So in storytelling or things like that, you see like the shift in posture, the rhythm changes in like the head movements, which feeds into like the culture. Yeah. So that's kind of cool too, how it's like the same, it's still American Sign Language, but you add yet another region to it, or another like subset to it. Some other ones they're not specifically variants of ASL, but also like fall within this are Pidgin Signed English, this is a context signing, so it's a blend of English structure.
Sorry, the pigeons?
Pidgin. Pidgin.
Oh, I think Pidgin Signed English, you're confusing me. Okay, Pidgin Signed English.
Pidgin Signed English. So this is like what you were talking about with using the English structure of sentences with sign language. So basically what this does is it's often used by like hearing people, because it's hard for me to like think of a sentence and then put it in like what American Sign Language would look like. So like I would sign like a whole sentence straight through, whereas in American Sign Language it's typically like reverse order or whatever. That would be considered Pidgin Signed English. You have more finger spelling, so like more spelling out words instead of having signs for it. And then it's basically manually coded English. So you're matching the English words. If you said like I like pizza, it would be you would sign I and then like and then pizza. Yeah. Instead of like in sign language it would be pizza I like. Yeah. So like it's that is like what you're talking about with that Pidgin sign. Yeah. Another one is tactile ASL. So this is
actually it'd be like J adobe say J. What's the I like in French?
I don't know.
Can't remember. Anyway, continue.
The tactile sign language. So this is for what if you were deaf and blind, you would learn tactile sign language. So this is just where somebody puts their hand in your hand and they do the same signs.
Okay, yeah. I've seen that before once or twice.
Mm-hmm. And then final one would be cued speech. And this one's hard. I had a lot of students who didn't know sign language. So like when I was teaching high school, I had a lot of deaf kids in my class, but half of them knew sign language and like the other half knew cued speech. So I had two different interpreters, both signing different things I was speaking too. So it was like It goes all over the place. So cued speech is a visual communication system. So your hand shapes represent the consonants, and the location near your mouth represents the vowels. So it's literally like signing word for word what you're saying, like spelling it out using just your hands and like this area of your face, like right around your mouth.
Wow. So I don't get why people would develop these multiple, I get some of them are just a natural, like it happens through the use, but surely cued speech is something totally different.
Yes, and so cued speech is the answer to a lot of deaf kids or deaf people in general have a hard time learning to read because of, like we talked about, the phonetics. So when you see like a P and a B on like when you're lip reading, they look exactly the same.
Okay, yeah.
So if you have a cued speech and you like are putting, I don't know any of the signs, but if you cue the P and cue the B, then they can see that that's different and they can pick up on it and learn to like, okay, I'm reading bus.
Yeah, okay. So why would someone learn cued speak and not like the other version? Sorry, what was the other version called?
Tactile ASL?
As in, like you said, you had class of people doing cued speech and people doing
ASL.
ASL. Yeah. Why would you learn one and not the other?
So a lot of times they do learn both.
Okay.
That's another debate. Like when it goes into this like oral versus manual debate, the oral tends to go for the cued speech, the manual tends to go for the ASL, and it's seen as like not like they can't be together. But personally, I think like if you're trying to learn how to read, cued speech is important, and if you're wanting to just like talk, ASL is important. So teaching both. If
from an outsider's point of view who doesn't know any deaf people and all that, like, it seems like you want to integrate with society and the mass population. So therefore cued speak would almost help there, and then ASL would be for you and your people, other deaf people.
Yeah.
It seems like, because surely that would help you, cued speak would help you more, maybe I'm wrong, with just like everyday life rather than, no?
Cued speech would help you learn to read better. So then, yes, it would help you more with everyday life because you could read. And a lot of times, like, deaf people will carry on a notepad and, like, will communicate back and forth through writing and like, reading what the other person said. Yeah. So, like, yeah, it will help with that. But then if you look at, like, the general population, because ASL has gotten so big and has become, like, a foreign language for most people, like college credit as, like, foreign language or second language or whatever, more people know sign language. So, like, not very few, but a lot of hearing people don't choose cued speech as their second thing to learn. They choose sign language.
Yeah, okay.
So you have a better chance of being able to communicate through sign or through like code, some kind of like hand language through ASL than you would cued speech. So
like on your CV, do you put you can speak ASL?
Do what?
On your resume, do you put you can speak ASL? And do you think that's appealing to people? I guess the teacher would be, yeah.
Yeah. I put 4 semesters of ASL because, like, I never put fluent, but I put, like, I thought I knew more than I did, and then I got in that class, and I was like, I don't know half of these signs, but it was, like, physics stuff.
Yeah.
So
how do they create new words? Like, when iPod came out, how did they go, okay, iPod?
So a lot of technical terms, well, so it's 2 different things. A lot of the technical terms, like, things that I would be talking about in physics do become finger spelled, like where you just spell out the word because there's not a sign for it.
Yeah.
But then you have like generations of kids who grew up with iPods. I don't know what the sign for iPhone, iPod is, but they would have come up with one, and then it would just have like transcended and people learn it.
And do you think, because like iPods are hardly used anymore and it's an iPhone, do you think that same symbol is just used and it's understood that it means one of these things and we'll just use that same sign? Or will they have individual? Okay. Interesting. But like the Amazon Echo, how would you say, oh, that's an Amazon Echo? It's like, or you'd probably just spell it?
Probably just spell it.
Because surely the more and more you go through things, the more and more spelling you'd be doing and less actual.
So a lot of times you would describe it. So that, like, I don't know of any other, so Amazon would just be Amazon. Like, you would have to spell it, because if not, it would be like the rainforest.
Like, I don't know why the hell a deaf person would ever talk about a speaker that speaks to you. But, if they did, somewhat, what is that?
Echo, then I don't really know what to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is like, it goes back to just like in those deaf schools, like early on, these new things. It's the same thing as like Urban Dictionary, right? Like these words don't really mean anything until
Yeah.
like kids come up with them, and then they just start like meaning something. It's the same thing there. Like they'd make up a sign, and then it'd just start meaning something.
Yeah, that's fair. But like, at some point, some kid will meet some other kid and have a sign for iPod, and the other kid will have another sign for iPod, and they'll be like, and they have to describe it.
Well, that's a good segue into this other variation, which is sign variations. So
Okay.
because there's all these different regions coming together and like having different signs, different words, a lot of different words have multiple signs. And so it does come down to like kind of like having to use context to figure it out. Like pizza, there's at least 3 different signs that I know of. And like one of them
Any
like,
similar or the altogether different?
well, one of them's like you like are like eating a pizza. The other one is you like spell the Z-A, and the last one is like you actually spell pizza.
Okay.
So 3 different signs for one thing, and
But
like
they're
2 of them
yeah,
kind of are
okay.
similar, but then like the eating something could be literally eating anything.
Yeah.
Halloween has 2 signs, at least 2 signs. Early has at least 2.
Early?
No, 3. Early.
Like early in the morning.
Yeah. Soon. Birthday. So like multiple things have multiple signs.
And it seems weird because things like birthday, you truly think that would be one that'd come up at the very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be something that like the founders would thought of.
Like we're gonna set this in stone that this means birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you have like all the different areas, and
It's like, to me, like thinking about when you learn, I don't know what you got your next, but like, you know, when you learn French, you learn, my name is this, I like this, I come from Edinburgh, I do this, I want to go to the swimming pool in the bibliothèque, you know, it's all that sort of stuff. Is it the same when you speak sign language? Are you learning, but as you said, because you're not speaking in English sentences, you wouldn't necessarily learn it that way either. Are you just learning random words, or what's...
yeah. Well, at least I don't know. I can't speak for like the deaf schools, but in like college, like learning, you learn the alphabet, then you learn numbers, and then you start learning words, and you learn words and words and words, and you learn the syntax of like how to phrase them. But for the most part, you're learning words.
Okay. So if I don't know what you got next, but if I said to you, I need to go to the shops to get some carrots, would you just say shops, carrots, need to get, or get carrots? How would you, because you wouldn't say, I need to go to the shops to get carrots.
No, you would say like, how would you do it?
Carrots
I need
going
to
to
go
shops.
to shops to get carrots. You take out the fluff. So you could say, how would you do it? That's a really long sentence. I need to go to the shop to get carrots. Something like, I need carrots, go to shop. Or...
Okay. So you said, like, so the product or the part of that sentence which is important is the carrots. So would that come first?
It could. There's like 6 different ways you can do it. So another way
Okay.
you could do it is like, I go to the shop, why? Carrots.
Would you say why?
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's not, you're almost answering the question. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I have it broken down by like, all the different ways you can
And
structure sentences.
I'm assuming there's no one set of structure. It's just whatever you kind of feel at that point, or whatever you're most used to, and they have to pick it up.
Yeah, and kind of like the region too. Actually, let's go to that next. We'll come back to parameters. Let's go to this. Go ahead and go to the syntax. So
Okay.
the most commonly used one is subject, verb, object. This has no pauses in it, and it's very continuous. So I'm gonna just stick with the sentence of the father loves the child.
Okay.
So for that one, it would be father, love, child. So you would sign father, you would sign love, you would sign child.
Wait, so this would be me as a dad saying, I love you, child?
No, just as this having the sentence like the father loves the child.
Okay.
So the child is the subject or the topic in this one, but this one would be father, love, child, and like no breaks and no no pauses in that. The next one would be the next one's where it becomes like topic based. So for this one, you move the topic to the front and have object, subject, verb. So you would say the child, the father loves. So you'd like point and you'd be like what's child, like child, and you'd say like father loves. But for that one, you have a head tilt towards the child. So like you're like the child, like that person, the father loves. Emphasis on the subject or the object of the sentence.
Okay.
Those are 2 ways. The next one would be a subject copy. So that's what I was talking about, where you move the subject again to the end. So this one you say father love, child, father.
Okay.
So you'd be like father love, child, and then you like clarify that it's the father that loves the child.
Why would that need clarification at that point? Because there's no other... Well, again, it totally depends on the rest of the sentence, I guess, you know?
Well,
and as you said, some people just do it out like naturally. They just, yeah.
But also because you're taking out like the father loves the child, and you're just saying father love child, it gives more clarification to like what that sentence means when you add father at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
And then with that one too, like your head nodding towards the father at the end for that clarification. 2 more. So you have the next one is a null subject. So the subject becomes implied, but you can also add it to the end and give it that clarification. So you would say like love child father, and father, you would like, that's where you'd get the clarification.
Okay.
Like that would be like the why one, like what why carrots. So you would be like love child who, or like who father.
Yeah.
So like kind of like answering a question. And then the last one is you do the topicalization with a null subject and a subject copy. So it's object, verb, subject. So you go child love, and then you clarify it as the father. So you put the child first again, and then you say somebody loves it, and then you clarify that it's the father.
Yeah.
So lots of different ways you can say it, all very confusing, and it's kind of ordered by the importance of the word. Like whatever you put the importance on.
So why have the options?
I don't know. I can't answer that question.
It doesn't make sense. It's almost like, I can understand because it's easy for me to say that because I was taught English, being able to hear and said this is how sentences are structured. And when you don't know how sentences are structured because you can't hear it or read it, then you have to make and it's like, it's the whole thing. If you were thrown into the jungle and you created your own language, how would it work? You know, you and 5 people never spoke English.
Yeah.
What you would create a language because you naturally would, but how would it structure it? And it probably would be what's important, why is it important, clarification. It would be something like that. So I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it does seem strange considering they're taught by people who do have sentence structure. And maybe it's laziness. And I don't mean laziness in a bad way. I mean like ease.
Ease of teaching, like reading and stuff. Yeah. And that's definitely, as a hearing person learning sign language, that was the hardest part. Like I could memorize words all day, but you like sit me down. We had to like sit down and watch these videos and decode them like every week. And just watching the sentence structure and like how, first off, they were so fast and I could never figure out how to slow them down. But watching the sentence structure, and then I'd be like, I know all the words that they're saying, but I'm not fast enough to, and I don't have like, I'm not fast enough to decode it, to flip all the words around to write a sentence that I need to write.
Sure.
So that was like, that is the hardest part.
That's interesting.
And then speaking, like signing with a deaf person, like
they must be rolling
I always
their eyes
felt
going,
bad because it was, I'm going to sign it in English because in my brain, that's what makes sense.
But you can't feel bad. It's just like, they can't get annoyed at you. You're trying to communicate with them and it's either this or nothing. Yeah. I guess.
The people we were with, these were all deaf socials, so like they like it would be a monthly thing where they came out to help us learn language. Yeah. So it was like they knew what they were getting into with us. Yeah. They were very patient.
It's so a few other questions. I don't know, you won't be able to answer these because you're not deaf, but when we have voices in our head, when we think, we basically use our voice, and to some degree. Do they use hand signals? Or do they just think of, how do you think if you don't have a voice?
So this is very interesting, and I do have an answer to this. So one of my sign language teachers, so we alternated back and forth. So year 1 we had a guy teacher, year 2 a girl, and then alternated. So the girl teacher, she was hearing like typical developing until she was like 8, and then I think she had meningitis, but it was like some sickness, and she lost her hearing. Sure. So up until 8, like going to school normal, like speaking back and forth, had language, and then lost her hearing and had to learn sign language. And so she explained that like a lot of times, she never explained the like thinking in your head type thing, but she explained that in dreams for a long, like you dream in like speaking, but then her dreams slowly started to shift to where they were just signing. Yeah. So she wasn't speaking anymore in her dream. She was only signing.
Well, that's similar to people who learn languages. Like, we have a friend who spoke Portuguese until she was young, and she had a conscious, not a conscious, but like an aware of a change when it changed from Portuguese in her head to Brazilian. No, English. Yeah. So I guess that's a similar thing. But it's like, when you're sick, just in your car going, I wonder what I need to do today. Are they thinking, I wonder what I need to do today?
I think they're thinking, I wonder what I need to do today, because...
But how do they know? Because there's no such thing as those words. Is it today today, wonder, need, do, it's a...
That's
is
such
it
a good
wrong? Is
question.
it
I don't
weird?
know.
And because they must be signing.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I guess it could be written words.
If they know how to read, it'd be written words. But in my head, like, I couldn't do that same thing I couldn't think that in any other way other than the words. And the words I would say out loud if I was saying it loud to myself. But, like, since they can't do that, they must be signing it. So in the head, they've got an image rather than a word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It seems strange, but because they can't sit and speak to themselves. But they can, but it's like...
I don't know, you're... Such a good question.
There must be forum out for this. We should check it out and bring it back
We
next
should.
week and ask and explain.
Yeah,
There
we
must be
should.
some deaf people out there who maybe were born deaf and somehow got one of those hearing aids or something and are able to hear.
Cochlear implants.
Yeah.
That was a very good question. Very interesting.
All right, your parameters.
Yes, so there's 5 parameters that make up all of sign language, or all of American Sign Language.
Okay.
So the first one is, well, before that, you can use one or both hands, and that's not one of the parameters, so it just depends. The first one is hand shapes. So there's 18 hand shapes, plus a few other ones that are taken from the American manual alphabet, so like the ABCs or whatever. I'm not going to go through all these hand shapes, but there's 18 plus some of the letters.
And is this for spelling or is this for...
For all signs. So all ASL signs are composed of either of 18 specific hand shapes plus additional letters.
Okay.
So like family is like an F, and you like do it in a circle. So like that would be one of the hand shapes taken from
So give me
the
an
sign
example
language.
of how that F shape is used for another word. Sorry, I don't be putting
Free, family. What else is there?
And is that F?
Yes, F, yeah.
Okay. So we're doing like the OK sign, guys, if you don't know. OK sign, and putting 2 OK signs together and then pulling them around in a circle is family, and then pulling them away from each other is free, essentially.
Yep.
Kind of, it's hard to describe, but... Okay.
I think...
Have you got another, like, what's another, can you give me another example? But so F being one of the shapes, there's a few other, or 18 other shapes, and another few from the English alphabet, and they are moved or used in combinations. Have you ever got like an F in one hand and like something else in another hand, and then that creates that sort of word? Or is it always...
Yeah, maybe not F and something else, but definitely 2 separate hand shapes. So hand shapes are combined with 4 other parameters, and they make up different words.
Okay, yeah, so what...
The next one is movement. So there's about 20 movements. You can go like lateral motion movements in all the various directions, twisting of the wrist, so supinating and pronating, flexing the wrist, opening and closing the hands, circles, which is the family one, moving the fingers, like approaching a location, touching, crossing, stroking. It's a weird one. Linking, separating, or interchanging hands. So that'd be like break up is like this, get back together is like this.
Yeah.
So then you can also move those in large or small areas.
So if you did that same family one with big, would that change it? Yeah, it would theoretically change it if it was a word.
Yeah, you could be like big, and so that gets to another parameter towards the end. But you could do like little family or like big family. And depending on that circle, like that would change, like the context of it.
Okay.
And then varying degrees of speed, abruptness, and intensity.
So they don't change the word though. Speed surely just changes the feeling behind the sentence, or the sort of the context of the sentence, surely.
Yes. So like you could be like running, or you could be like running, and like that would be.
So
like,
if you didn't see guys, but she did basically a slower finger movement, and then she increased the speed of the movement along with her voice, which she had.
And then like repetition also increases that too. So like if you were doing like driving and it was like a short distance, or you could just be like driving, and like usually the circular motion is more of the repetition. So hand shape and movement. Next would be palm orientation. So that's just the relative degree of the rotation of the hand. So that's just like, is it up, down, like is it out, or like in, or wherever it is. So that one is a little bit different. Like, what's one I can give you an example of? Like nice would be like this.
So she slid her hands across themselves like the letter H in UK language.
That's what?
That's H.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't know what a different one would be. Next would be location. So this is like it excludes the hands themselves, and then there's 12 others. So you could, like, location around the face or head, forehead and eyebrow, eyes or nose, mouth or chin, cheek or ear, so like the side of the head, neck, trunk, which is shoulders to waist, upper arm, elbow and forearm, back of wrist, and then inside of the wrist.
So these all change
Meaning of the word.
Meaning of the word. Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of a word that would be something in your eyes and something on your chest that would be different? I'm putting in the spot.
So I don't remember what exactly these mean.
Okay.
But there was at one point where we were learning the different parameters, and like this is a sign, this is a sign, and this is a sign.
Kayla drew a line across her eyebrows, under her nose, and then under her chin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like all of those mean different things. I don't remember what the words were. I tried to look them up earlier. Okay. But like depending on where it is a completely different sign. Uh-huh. Another example is like up here. So like having your 5 fingers up at the top of your head is father or grandfather, and then by your chin is mother or grandmother. Uh-huh. Okay. So same hand or same hand shape and same movement, but the location's different.
Yeah.
And then.
And as you said, to make a grandfather,
you change the movement.
You just move the movement. So
yep.
Okay, so she did that same sort of almost like a horn that you do if you were doing like a moose on your head. It would be farther, moving it away once, it would be farther and moving it away, and then kind of doing a wee sort of jump step at the end.
And you like it adding great.
And
like,
that's okay.
Would just be dependent on how many things you had.
Yeah.
You can also be in neutral space, which I don't really know what that one meant. Uh-huh. Then the last one is non-manual markers. So these are the body postures and facial expressions that go with the sign. So moving your eyebrows, your cheeks, nose, head, torso, eyes, like all of that to make the sign something bigger. So like if you sign like fat, like you like sign like and you like blow your cheeks out. Okay. And like when you sign skinny, you like suck your cheeks in. Uh-huh. If you sign bored, like you like go like this and like act like you're
roll
actually bored.
Eyes,
yeah. So like all the different facial like non-hand shape movements that go with it to add like flavor to the sentence. Uh-huh. And all of those combined.
And you said some of like the African American sign language, they would accentuate some of those parameters more than others.
Yes. Okay. So that's where those eubonic shifts come in, and like, especially during like storytelling and things like that, like the non-manual markers are what get played up a lot more.
Interesting. Couple of questions. One, sarcasm. Can sarcasm be done, and is that a very like using that last parameter, maybe like using the facial expressions to dictate the okay? Yeah,
it would definitely be like, you'd have to use the facial expression. That is one that I had so much trouble with.
Yeah, I bet. And
you've got to get animated.
How are jokes done?
Same
there must
way,
be jokes, but if you're having to interpret the sentence, it'd be quite difficult. And like
telling
dry
a
humor
joke,
and it
would all be based on those non-manual markers. Like that would be, and they're like deaf people are some of the most animated people I've ever seen. Like they get like big with their movements and like they get into it, and that's me. I've gotten better at it, but how shy I was back then, like my movements were like right here, and I did not do any of that. And so like a lot of what I was saying like kind of got lost because
it was
I'm missing one of the 5 parameters. And that accompanied with the fact that my syntax was all off, like wasn't a great signer, but.
And you know how when we speak to children or we speak to our seniors or our peers or even to a dog, I know you wouldn't say to a dog, but you changed your tone and your wordage a little bit. Do you do the same in sign language? Like, would you be a bit more soft with a child? And like, if you're trying like tell someone off, other than facial expressions, is it just more direct, or what's the?
Yeah. So like, and like the speed of it too. So like with a kid, like you'd be very slow. You'd be very like the slow, like flowy type movements. The words obviously would be, you choose different words, and then like if you were like mad, like I saw my teachers get mad a couple times, and it's like very just like strict, like almost like if you were like a teacher and you were just like shaking your finger at them, like that kind of stuff, and it's like. I don't know.
It's interesting the combination between the words and the other parameters that go with it. Like, you know, saying, like, being affectionate towards someone, saying something like, I love you to your mum and I love you to your girlfriend, or I love you to your wife on your wedding day. There's like 3 different ways of saying that, even though it's the same word, and we use tone, where they're obviously going to have to use either some speed change and it's it's weird to try and get across that same emotion with a movement. You know, it's like, imagine we had to do that. And like, even if we didn't know any ASL and we had to speak to each other for a full day just with movement. Like, I've done that, tried to do it in my CrossFit class. I've tried to not speak for a whole class and just get them to respond just with my movement. And it's really, I can't get past a warm up, you know, it's so difficult.
That's hard.
Because people aren't paying attention like they're meant to or need to.
Yeah.
But also because you struggle
without the words to back it up. Yeah. So the only other things would be like, for grammar, like I said, like the verbal inflection. So like the repetitive circular movements for like to increase, like I was driving or like things like that. And then reciprocity. So if you have like two people doing something back and forth at each other, like shooting at each other, you would have one hand doing it and like go back and forth at it. Yeah. And then classifiers. This one's kind of goes into those like non-manual markers. If you had to sign like a bunny hopping and a bunny hopping downhill, like just the movement of like you would like go down, like start going downhill and like show that the decline. Yeah. So that the classifier would be like the hand shape, and then it's bound to the movement, which would describe the sentence. And then the last thing, finger spelling. Like finger spelling is in typical ASL. Finger spelling is only saved for proper nouns or technical terms with no sign language equivalent or very short English words. So like bus is usually just finger spelled, or fun is finger spelled. Like very short words, on, it. Actually, they don't really use it. On would be one. So like little short words, those are ones that you would finger spell. But everything else, if it's typical ASL, has a sign or has a description.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So how many friends do you have that speak ASL only? Do you have any? Or is it just people you knew and have worked with?
That only speak ASL, or who can speak ASL?
Only. Like during your time, have you made a friend? And do you think there's definitely a clear divide between the hearing and the not hearing?
It's very hard to, unless, I mean, they're very welcoming and open, but it's hard. Like,
I guess when some people say communication is important, so
yeah, something like that.
I don't know if I really believe that, but
don't start with me. But I do have a lot of friends who sign. I know, like, there's this one guy in Virginia that I know, like, both his parents are deaf, so he grew up signing, and so he's an interpreter now. So I know a lot of people like that.
Did he struggle to speak initially?
I don't know. I never asked him that. I don't think so.
I suppose the TV's on or something.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being deaf? Can you imagine not hearing the things you hear? Like, at times it'd be nice, but like, just so impractical at the same time. Like, you'd need a visual alarm for everything, you know, a visual representation for everything that we get warned about, you know, through eyesight. Through hearing, sorry, not eyesight.
One of my favorite stories, like, it just shows like the ignorance around like the deaf community. So my teacher went to this conference and was staying in a hotel and was like, I think this was probably before cell phones were really big and like had alarms and stuff. So she like goes to the front desk. She's like, hey, I need a wake up call in the morning. I'm deaf, so like I'm gonna need somebody to wake me up. Yeah. And like there's ways they can do it, like different like types of alarms they can set up and things like that. But they're like, okay, like we'll give you a wake up call. And like she gave them the time or whatever, and like gave them permission to do it. And she like woke up the next morning like really, really late, and she's like, what happened? And so she like went down and she's like, asked for a wake up call or whatever, and they're like, well, we called your room and then we came up and we knocked on the door, and she's like, this is not gonna work.
And that's just stupidity more than anything else. But maybe did she come down and sign it to them or write it to them? Or?
Yeah, she like wrote it to them.
Okay, yeah. So that's silly.
Yeah.
But I guess you're also asking some random, you know, morning hotel staff going to this random woman's room, and they're like, no, some wee kid doesn't want to. But even so, it's still not an excuse. What's like fire alarms? I don't know how anyone would ever know. Like
it's the flashing lights.
But even like in my office, there's no flashing lights.
Really?
You know, and like even in like a hotel room, you can sleep right through a flashing light. You know?
I can't remember. A lot of times they have like specific things set in place, like a vibrating bed. That'll help.
I guess you probably have to specify, and they would have to have some sort of
they have. Regulation. I mean, they have to abide by like ADA and all that. So there has to be different things for that.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of other situations where that would really kind of be an issue. Can't read off the top of my head though.
Anything sleeping would be tough. Because, I mean, you have to get that.
I mean, great on a plane and shit. Great on a plane.
Yeah.
You know how much money you'd save on, like, not needing things like music and headphones and anything like that. Like, I guess it's not like that bad. You just watch TV, but you put on subtitles.
Yeah.
Well, I guess some subtitles. Did you guys have TV programs that were signed?
Like growing up? Or
Anywhere.
like when did we watch them?
What was it on TV? Because we had them.
Not that I remember.
So we had like the usual screen and it was shortened a little bit, and then we had a person at the bottom signing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was usually on very early in the morning, which was like weird as almost they had to record it and watch it back. But all the normal shows would be on, but they'd have someone signing them.
That's really cool. No, we didn't have anything like that.
I'll show you one. I'll send you like a YouTube video of some.
Yeah,
And we always used to watch it as kids because we'd get up early in the morning because we were kids.
Yeah.
And you'd watch it, but this is weird. You know, you'd always make fun of it.
Yeah. I remember when some of the like shows on ABC Family came out. It's like a family type TV show type
I got
thing.
that from ABC Family.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And there was two of them, two different shows that had somebody who was like deaf on there. And I remember like I was just in college like learning all of this, and I would try to like figure out what they were saying, but still too fast. It's so fast.
I've played rugby with a few deaf people, and that's really tough because obviously the game is dictated by the whistle, and unless they're aware, it's they're just playing. And it took a lot of patience as a kid to have this guy, because it's physical contact, and if you're not setting up or ready for it, you can get hurt if someone's hitting you and you're sort of stopped because the whistle's blowing. And that was tough for him and for the ref and for everyone else. So that was interesting
for sure.
But it's also referred to as a disability in a lot of cases. So like I had another friend who like was an archer for Scotland, but because he was hard of hearing, he wasn't in the normal archery. It was in like the Paralympic versions or whatever. And I was like, that seems weird because how does hearing affect your archery? But I guess you probably could have competed in the normal Olympics.
That's strange that it. So
like, I'm sure it's categories and stuff as well. So it's probably on like the lowest category type thing. But
so two things with that. Like first, under like if you get an IEP, like if you have a special education in order to get services here, you can get special ed services under deaf and hard of hearing. Okay. That is one of the categories, and it's like it does count as a disability. But in the adaptive CrossFit course I took the other day, it was talking about how like in the Paralympics, something about how like the disability has to match like the sports you'd be playing in. So like if archery is not something that
requires hearing, it would be okay. Well, I just know that he was deaf and he was doing archery, and it was some version of but I don't know exactly how it all went around. Yeah, cool. You got much else?
No.
I mean, that's a really interesting topic, and I'm sure there's lots more we didn't hint on. I'm sure. Well, thankfully they're not going to hear this, so they can't comment on us. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff there people didn't know and have lots of questions.
Yeah. And
guys, I would recommend go back and have a re-listen of this one, because even I was struggling to follow some of that stuff. But mainly because I was thinking of random questions, because as soon as you say something, my brain goes off on a tangent.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched some of my favorite videos to watch are the sign language rap videos. So like watching like a lot of the big rappers now have. There's one girl in particular, I can't remember her name. It starts with an A, I think. She comes and signs the concerts. It is insane. It's so good. It's so fast.
Weird. Well, not weird, but I mean, it's like some of the lyrics are just ugh.
Yeah.
Why you have to rap like?
But there's all kinds of songs being signed, and they're signed in the syntax that a deaf person would recognize.
Yeah, so it's basically recreating the song to some degree.
So it's pretty cool.
But it's also weird because I guess they can work for the vibrations, but all they're doing is learning the words. But the thing is, the words for a lot of these rappers or whatever are crap.
Yeah.
And you're like, imagine like sign languaging that bloody Takeshi 6ix9ine or whatever it was.
Oh,
and
God.
even like bloody Cardi B or something.
B.
It's like, really? You're sign languaging this? Okay.
I mean, they want to know what it's about.
You want to be part of it. I know.
Yeah. And then a lot of times, like with the cochlear implants or with like residual hearing, like I had this one kid who would wear these headphones, which was like, they were like the earbuds, and he would turn them all the way up, like his like I was like, dude, any residual hearing you have left is gonna be gone because of how loud you're listening to this music. But like, it's because of the vibrations. He could feel the vibrations of it, and then like learn the lyrics later, and it would be a song to him. So there's that side of it too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got to allow and have these guys do what they need to do to live their life, but
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Not at the moment.
Cool.
I'll probably throw you some later though.
Okay. I would like talk more about signs and stuff, but it's visual, so
yeah, it's visual.
Gotta leave that out.
So. Yep. Okay, well, that's good. Nice topic. We're actually approaching an hour, so it's shits and hits. I don't have really anything.
I don't think I have any either.
Nope. That song by Marshmello and Bastille. I love the guy from Bastille's voice. I don't know why. I don't know if you know Bastille very well. They did a song Pompeii. That's one of their first songs, and they did one of the songs for that Bright thing on Netflix. But it's like The World's Gone Mad. I absolutely love his voice is great, and he does that song, which is really good. I think it's their own song, and then he remixed it, Marshmello. But anyway, I'm digging that right now. I didn't watch anything though.
Oh, I watched the Toy Story 4 trailer. It was so terrible.
Yeah, I've not watched it yet.
It's a teaser trailer.
I saw the teaser trailer of Buzz tied up at the fun fair.
Yeah, it's dumb.
So apparently the story's like the girls not treated the toys very well, and they've just kind of gone missing and fallen about, and then they've refound Bo Peep, and she's a bit of a badass now or something.
Oh, the teaser trailer I watched showed nothing like that.
Yeah. There's that new Aladdin trailer, but I've not watched it yet with the blue genie. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, Will Smith.
Oh, we had all the Super Bowl trailers as well, but we didn't really talk about it, but we're excited for them, sure. Yeah. All right, let's leave it there then.
Okay.
And we can get onto that next week.
Cool.
We've got nothing else, so what do I normally say? Oh, yeah.
Tweet us. I'm just kidding, we don't have Twitter.
I do have Twitter.
Oh, we do?
We do have Twitter and Instagram, we just don't tweet. Or Instagram, not much. At the Mumblecast on both of them. Let us know if you send us a video of you signing a sentence. We'll try and decipher it.
Yes.
Or Kayla will.
Please
I won't. I tell you what they need to do. Well, that's hard as to say. They need to have like an emoji board for just sign language.
That'd be cool.
You know, it'd be a whole bunch of gifts needed because you couldn't do the movement. But that'd be quite interesting. Okay, well, that's about it. And I've been Liam.
I'm Kayla.
And this is my Mumblecast.
Bye.